The morning started like every other morning in the Serengeti. The sun climbed above the horizon, painting the grasslands in shades of amber and gold. A pride of 12 lions moved through the tall grass together, hunting as they had hunted 1,000 times before. But this morning would be different. This morning would change everything. Two brothers walked side by side at the front of the hunting party. Their names were Kali and Darius. They were not the biggest lions in the pride, but they were the closest. Born on the same day to different mothers, they had grown up together, hunted together, fought alongside each other through every challenge the African wilderness could throw at them. Kali was the older one by a few hours. His mane was already dark and impressive, spreading across his shoulders like a cape made of shadows. Darius had the leaner build, faster on his feet, more agile when it came to the kill. Together they were unstoppable. The pride had picked up the scent of a buffalo herd moving through a ravine about 2 miles south. Buffalo were dangerous prey. One wrong move could mean death. A single bull could gore a lion with horns that curved like scythes. But the pride was hungry, and buffalo meant meat that would feed them for days. So they moved, 12 golden bodies flowing through the grass like a river of muscle and instinct. The two brothers communicated without words. A glance meant spread left. A flick of the tail meant hold position. A barely audible growl meant something was wrong. They had done this so many times that they moved like a single organism, thinking as one even though they had two brains. The other females in the pride followed their lead. When Kali and Darius hunted, prey died. It was that simple. But they did not see the danger waiting in the ravine. The Outlander Coalition had been stalking this territory for weeks. 5 males, all in their prime, all hungry for what the resident pride possessed. Prime hunting ground, multiple females, water sources that never ran dry. Everything a lion could want. They had been waiting for an opportunity, and this morning, that opportunity arrived on 4 legs. As the pride approached the ravine, Kali and Darius leading the way, the Outlanders struck from both sides. They had positioned themselves perfectly. 2 males attacked from the left flank, 2 more came from the right. And one, the largest of the coalition, emerged directly in front of the brothers, blocking the path. Kali saw the danger first. His body went rigid. His nose caught the scent of strange males, the scent of invaders. He roared a warning, but it was already too late. The attack had begun. The females scattered back toward the grasslands, their maternal instinct kicking in. They knew this could turn into a battle they could not win. The strongest lionesses grabbed the youngest cubs and ran, but Kali and Darius did not run. They faced the Outlanders with the pride of males who owned this land. The largest Outlander, a male named Shaka, with a scar running down his left side, charged directly at Kali. His jaws snapped open, his claws extended. This was not a test. This was a fight for territory, for dominance, for survival. Kali met him head-on, and the collision of 2 massive bodies shook the ground beneath them. Darius had his own problems. 2 Outlanders flanked him, trying to separate him from his brother. He spun, his faster movements giving him the advantage. He caught one male across the face with a vicious swipe. Blood sprayed. The Outlander yelped and retreated a few steps, but he did not leave. Neither did his companion. For the first 10 minutes, the fight was evenly matched. Kali held his own against Shaka, landing solid blows, drawing blood. Darius danced between his two attackers, using his speed to stay ahead of their jaws and claws. But slowly, the numbers began to matter. The Outlanders were fresh. They had been hunting as a team, had trained together for months. Kali and Darius were starting to tire. That was when the third Outlander arrived to help Shaka. What happened next would replay in Kali's mind 1,000 times over the following months. He saw it happening but could not stop it, could not save his brother, could not change the outcome no matter how hard he fought. Darius was overwhelmed. 3 against 1 was impossible odds even for a strong lion. One Outlander grabbed his hind leg, another clamped down on his shoulder, the third went for his throat. Darius roared, a sound of rage and desperation, and fought with everything he had. His claws raked across their bodies, his teeth found flesh, but there were simply too many of them. Kali broke away from Shaka and ran toward his brother. He had to reach him, he had to help him, he had to save the male he had known since birth, the brother who had never abandoned him, who had stood beside him through every battle. He was too slow. The largest Outlander, the one attacking Darius's throat, twisted his head with brutal force, Kali heard the snap, a sound like a branch breaking in a storm. Darius's body went limp, his roars turned to silence. In that moment, something inside Kali died along with his brother. He attacked with a fury that shocked even the Outlanders. His grief became a weapon. His rage became unstoppable force. He killed two of them right there in the ravine, his teeth and claws working with mechanical precision, drawing on reserves of strength he did not know he possessed. But Shaka and the remaining Outlanders dragged him down through sheer numbers. They left him there bleeding heavily, certain he would not survive. The Outlanders claimed the territory that day. The pride scattered into the grasslands, the surviving females taking their cubs and disappearing into the wilderness. They would have to start over somewhere else. The pride that had existed for 7 years was destroyed in less than 20 minutes. Kali lay in that ravine for 3 days, barely breathing, his wounds so severe that vultures circled overhead, waiting for him to finally die. But death did not come. His body, stubborn and strong, refused to give up, even though his spirit wanted nothing more than to join his brother in the darkness. On the 4th day, he dragged himself to a nearby water source. He drank carefully, his broken ribs screaming with every breath. He looked at his reflection in the water and saw a stranger staring back at him, a male covered in scars, blood matted into his mane, one eye swollen completely shut. The reflection looked broken. The reflection looked finished. But Kali was not finished. As he drank, a memory surfaced. Not from yesterday, from years ago, when he and Darius were still cubs. They had been playing near the pride's resting spot. When they got too close to the boundary, another pride's female had chased them, snapping at their heels. Darius had stumbled and fallen. Without thinking, without hesitation, Kali had turned back and fought that female, buying his brother time to escape. Darius had never forgotten that moment. Neither had Kali. For years after that day, Darius had told the story, how his brother had risked everything for him, how loyalty meant something more than just hunting together or sleeping near each other. It meant being willing to die for the other male. It meant family above all else. Now Darius was gone, dead in that ravine, killed by males who understood nothing of family, nothing of loyalty, nothing of what it meant to have a brother. Something shifted inside Kali that afternoon. The grief transformed. The pain crystallized into something harder, something sharper. The Outlanders had taken everything from him. His territory, his pride, his brother, his entire world. But they had made one fatal mistake. They let him live. Kali rose to his feet, each movement a negotiation with pain. His ribs were cracked, but not broken completely. His eye would swell for weeks, but he would heal. His heart would never heal. But that was not the point. His heart did not need to heal. His heart needed to burn. He walked away from the water source, not as the broken male who had arrived hours earlier. He walked as something new, something dangerous, something that had lost everything except the drive for revenge. The Outlanders celebrated their victory for 3 weeks before they realized their mistake. They had taken the territory, but they did not have the strength to hold it. Other rival coalitions sensed weakness. Hyena clans grew bolder. The territory that had sustained a pride of 12 was struggling to support 5 males who fought constantly among themselves. Shaka tried to lead them, but leadership required respect, and respect came from victory. They had won one battle, but the war was far from over. Meanwhile, Kali was preparing. He moved through the borderlands where exiled and nomadic lions lived, males who had been driven from their territories, females who had lost their prides, lions who had nothing left but hunger and the will to survive. Kali did not talk much in those days. He did not need to. Other lions could see what he had become. They could see the scars. They could see the focused rage in his remaining good eye. They could feel the purpose radiating from him like heat from the African sun. Slowly, quietly, without any formal announcement or grand speech, Kali began to gather followers, not out of friendship, not out of loyalty to him personally, but out of recognition. These were lions who understood loss. Lions who understood what it meant to want something so badly that you would die trying to take it. Kali offered them something simple, a purpose, a fight they could win, a chance at territory and food and dominance. By the time 2 months had passed, Kali had assembled a coalition, not as large as the Outlanders, only 4 males besides himself, but they were hardened by survival. They were bound by something stronger than mere companionship. They were united by the knowledge that they had nothing to lose and everything to gain. Kali also did something the Outlanders had not expected. He allied with the scattered females from his original pride, the ones who had fled when the battle started. They were still alive, still dangerous, still hungry. He found them living in small groups throughout the grasslands and made them an offer. Help me take back the territory, and you will have a home again. You will have protection. You will have food. And most importantly, you will have justice for your pride. The females agreed. Now Kali was ready. He stood at the edge of the reclaimed territory one morning, looking north toward where the Outlanders were sleeping. His new coalition spread out behind him. The scattered females had positioned themselves at strategic points. Everything was in place. Everything was ready. But before the attack came, Kali wanted the Outlanders to know. He wanted them to understand what was happening and why. He wanted them to know who was coming for them. He opened his jaws and released a roar that shattered the morning quiet. It was not a roar of anger. It was not a roar of warning. It was something deeper, something that carried meaning in the way lion roars do. It was the roar of a male who had nothing left except the drive to make his enemies pay. It was the roar of a brother calling to the grave, promising vengeance. 5 males on the northern edge of the territory heard that roar and understood immediately. The Outlanders looked at each other with sudden fear. Shaka's scarred face went pale with recognition. The male they had left dying in that ravine was alive, and he was coming for them. The Outlanders gathered together immediately after hearing that roar. Shaka could see the fear in the eyes of his coalition members. Fear was dangerous. Fear made lions do stupid things. Fear made them panic and make mistakes. He needed them focused. He needed them ready for what was coming. But Shaka also felt fear. Deep down beneath the layers of arrogance and confidence, he felt it. He had killed Darius with his own jaws. He had watched the life leave the young male's eyes. He had been certain Kali would die in that ravine from his wounds, certain that the threat was finished. Certain that the territory was theirs to keep. He had been wrong. The scouts arrived before noon. Yes, there was a male approaching from the south. Yes, it was definitely the one from the ravine. Yes, he had gathered followers. The reports came in throughout the day. More and more lions joining his cause. A growing army of exiles and nomads converging on the territory. What had started as a victory 3 weeks ago was rapidly turning into a siege. Shaka called his coalition together at the base of a large acacia tree. The 5 males sat in a loose circle, each one processing the information in their own way. The largest Outlander, a male named Kato, spoke first. "We should leave," Kato said flatly. "Take what we can and move north. Find another territory before this army reaches us." The suggestion hung in the air like a foul smell. Leaving meant admitting defeat. Leaving meant giving up the prize they had fought so hard to take. Leaving meant being remembered as males who conquered a territory only to abandon it when real challenge arrived. Shaka felt his muscles tense with rage. "We do not run," Shaka said, his voice low and dangerous. "We hold this territory. We fight for it. These are the rules of the Savannah. A male either stands his ground or he dies a coward." But even as he said the words, doubt crept into his mind. Kali had been a strong male, but he had not been exceptional. He and Darius had been good hunters, good fighters, but not legendary. What could he possibly have gathered that would pose a real threat? A few desperate exiles. Some scorned females. That should not be enough. Yet the reports kept coming. More males arriving, females taking positions. By nightfall, Shaka could see the lights of fires on the southern border. Kali was not even trying to hide his approach. He was coming openly, deliberately, announcing his presence to every creature in the region. The first attack came just after midnight. The Outlanders were sleeping in shifts, their guards positioned at the borders of their claimed territory. Kali did not attack the guards. He bypassed them completely. Instead, he led a group of females directly to the watering hole where the Outlanders had been hunting. It was a secondary water source, one they used when the main river got too crowded. Kali knew that because he had lived in this territory his entire life, he knew every stone, every tree, every advantage the land could offer. His females poisoned the watering hole with a rotting carcass they had dragged from the northern marshlands. It was a simple strategy, not elegant, not honorable, but effective. By morning, every animal that drank from that hole would be sick. The Outlanders' food source was contaminated. Shaka realized immediately what had happened when his hunters returned empty-pawed. Kali was not just attacking, he was cutting off their resources. He was starving them out. The second day brought a different kind of assault. Kali and his coalition set fire to the tall grass using burning branches they had somehow collected. The flames spread quickly, driven by the afternoon wind. The outlanders had to scatter, breaking up their defensive formations. While they were separated, Kali's females attacked the abandoned cubs that Shaka had sired with the pride's lionesses. 4 young cubs were killed before the males could respond. The message was clear. This was not just about territory anymore. This was about erasure. This was about making certain that nothing the outlanders had created would survive. Shaka felt control slipping from his grip. His coalition was cracking. 2 of his males wanted to leave. One of them, a young outlander named Jabari, actually ran during the second day's chaos. He just abandoned his brothers and fled north into unknown territory. Shaka considered hunting him down and killing him for his cowardice, but he did not have time. Kali was too clever, too focused, too relentless. By the third day, the outlanders were running low on food and water. The poisoned watering hole was their only source, and several of them had gotten sick from it despite knowing the danger. They were weak, they were desperate, and Kali knew it. The final confrontation came at sunset on the 4th day. Kali approached with his full force. Not just his coalition of males, not just the allied females, but every lion he had gathered. Over 30 creatures moving across the grasslands in a coordinated formation. The outlanders could see them coming from miles away. There was no hiding. There was no escape. There was only the choice between fighting and fleeing. Shaka made his decision. He would fight. He would stand his ground. He would make Kali earn this victory through blood and suffering. The 2 leaders met at the center of the territory, at the same spot where they had killed Darius 4 days earlier. The acacia tree that had shaded the original pride stood nearby, a silent witness to what was about to unfold. "I killed your brother," Shaka said, his voice carrying across the grasslands. "And I would do it again." He was weak. This territory was never his. It is mine now. Kali did not respond with words. Instead, he released a roar that contained every ounce of grief, rage, and determination he had been carrying since that fateful morning. The roar was so powerful that birds scattered from nearby trees. Even the hyenas at the edges of the territory went silent, sensing something ancient and primal occurring. Then Kali attacked. The battle that followed was unlike anything the Savannah had seen in years. It was not just 2 males fighting for dominance. It was an entire pride taking revenge for betrayal and loss. It was desperation meeting arrogance. It was the forces of old meeting the forces of change. Kali moved like a creature possessed. Every blow he landed was for Darius. Every scratch was retribution for the grief. Every moment of combat was about reminding Shaka that there were things more powerful than physical strength. There was loyalty, there was family, there was the will of an entire group united by common purpose. Shaka fought well. He was strong, experienced, brutal, but he was fighting alone. His coalition was being overwhelmed by Kali's forces. The other outlanders were being pushed back by Kali's allied males. The females were holding their own against the scattered opposition. It was a massacre disguised as a battle. Within 30 minutes, 3 of the 5 original outlanders were dead. Shaka and Kato were the only survivors. They retreated, backing toward the northern border, their eyes wild with desperation. But Kali did not let them go. He pursued Shaka relentlessly, driving him further north with each exchange. His claws raked across the scarred male's already damaged face. His teeth found soft flesh on Shaka's shoulder. He was not trying to kill him quickly. He was making this last. He was making Shaka understand that violence had consequences. Finally, at the edge of the territory, Shaka made his final stand. His back was against a rocky outcrop. There was nowhere to run. There was nowhere to hide. There was only forward or death. "I will not die begging," Shaka growled, his voice hoarse from pain and exhaustion. "No," Kali said, and these were the first words he had spoken since the battle began. "You will die knowing that you killed the wrong brother." Kali ended it there. His jaws closed around Shaka's throat. The life drained from the outlander's eyes. A male who had conquered a territory was now conquered by grief itself, by the force of a brother's love, transformed into an instrument of vengeance. When it was finished, Kali stood over Shaka's body, breathing hard, his golden coat matted with blood that was not his own. His coalition gathered around him, creating a circle of protection and solidarity. The scattered females approached, their eyes showing respect and recognition. The territory was his again. The victory was complete, but Kali felt no triumph. He looked around at the land his original pride had held for so long, at the acacia trees and the grasslands and the water sources that had sustained him his entire life. And he thought of Darius. His brother was not here to see this. His brother would never see anything again because of the males he had just killed. Revenge, Kali realized, did not taste the way he thought it would. It did not fill the hole in his chest. It did not bring his brother back. It did not undo the loss. It only proved that Kali was still alive, still strong, still capable, but at what cost? Over the next days, Kali formally took control of the territory. His allied males established themselves as the new resident coalition. The scattered females returned, bringing their cubs with them. Life slowly returned to normal, or at least what could pass for normal after such violence. But Kali carried the weight of his brother's death every single day. He would walk to the spot where Darius had fallen and simply stand there, remembering the hunts they had done together, remembering the nights they had slept side by side, remembering the bond that had been severed in a single moment of violence. The other males in his coalition tried to involve him in territory management and hunting expeditions. But Kali's heart was no longer in these activities. He had achieved what he set out to do. He had avenged his brother. He had taken back what was stolen. He had made certain that the Outlanders paid for their crime. What he had not achieved was peace. One of his allied males, a strong lion named Simba, who had fought beside him since the beginning, finally approached him during a quiet afternoon. "You are destroying yourself," Simba said bluntly. "You won the war. You killed the enemies. You should be ruling this territory as a victor. Instead, you are sitting here acting like you lost." "I did lose," Kali replied, his voice hollow. "I lost my brother. That loss is forever. Nothing I do will change it." Simba sat down beside him. "You are right. Your brother is gone. But he is also here. Every time you defend this territory, he is here. Every time you hunt successfully, he is here. Every time you protect a cub or guide a hunt or make a decision about the pride's future, Darius is here with you. You did not lose him when he died. You only lost him when you stopped living the life he would have wanted you to live." Kali thought about this for a long time. His brother had been the fast one, the agile one, the one who saw opportunities others missed. Kali had always been the solid presence, the steady force. Together they were complete. Apart, they were incomplete. But perhaps there was a way to honor his brother that went beyond simple revenge. Perhaps there was a way to live that made Darius's death mean something beyond just causing more death. The rains came that season, heavy and persistent, turning the grasslands into a vast expanse of green. The territory flourished under Kali's leadership, not because he was an exceptional ruler, but because he made one crucial decision. He stepped back from the daily management and allowed Simba to guide the hunting expeditions. He focused instead on something that Darius would have valued, protecting the next generation. The cubs born that year became Kali's obsession. There were 7 of them, products of his coalition with the pride's females. He watched them constantly, teaching them skills, showing them how to move through tall grass, how to read the wind for predators. One of the cubs, a male with golden fur and alert eyes, reminded him so much of Darius that he named him Cato in his brother's honor. But memories are cruel things. They surface when you least expect them. One afternoon, as Kali was watching young Cato play with his siblings, a group of nomadic males appeared at the territory's border. They were not aggressive. They were simply passing through, moving north in search of unclaimed land. But their appearance triggered something in Kali. What if those males had been Outlanders? What if they had come to take the territory again? What if, despite everything he had done, despite every Outlander he had killed, others would come? The thought haunted him. He realized that revenge was not a permanent solution to the problem of survival. You could kill your enemies today, but new enemies would always appear tomorrow. This realization changed something fundamental in how Kali viewed his role. He called his coalition together one evening as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and crimson. Simba, Cato, and 2 other males named Jabari and Rafiki sat in a semicircle, waiting to hear what their leader had to say. These were the males who had fought beside him. These were the males who had bled for his cause. "I need to tell you something," Kali began, his voice steady but carrying the weight of difficult truth. I brought you all here because I needed revenge. I was broken, and I thought that breaking others would fix me. But I was wrong about many things. The males listened silently, their eyes fixed on their leader. Darius died because I was not fast enough, because I could not reach him in time, because the world is violent and cruel, and sometimes the best males die anyway. Kali continued. I thought if I killed Shaka, if I took back this territory, if I crushed the Outlanders completely, then somehow Darius would matter. Somehow his death would mean something. It does mean something, Simba said quietly. His death means that you are alive to honor his memory. That is the point, Kali said. I have been sitting in this territory like a ghost, going through the motions of leadership but not truly living. I hunt but taste nothing. I rest but sleep poorly. I exist but I do not truly live. And that is a waste. It is a waste of my life and an insult to Darius's memory. Over the following weeks, Kali made changes. He restructured the coalition to share leadership more equally. Simba took charge of territory defense. Jabari became the primary hunter. Rafiki managed the relationships with the scattered females. And Kali took on a new role. He became the teacher, the keeper of knowledge, the one who ensured that lessons learned through blood and suffering would not be forgotten. The other prides in the region began to notice the change. They saw a territory that was well managed, stable and strong. They saw males who hunted together with coordination, who defended their boundaries with discipline rather than just aggression. They saw a pride that was thriving not because of one dominant male's ruthlessness, but because of a system that valued cooperation. Months passed. The young cubs grew stronger. Kali spent hours with Kato and the other offspring, teaching them not just how to hunt, but why coordination mattered, why loyalty was more valuable than individual strength, why a family that worked together could overcome odds that would destroy individuals. One day, nearly a year after the final battle with Shaka, a scout brought news. A female from the original pride had been spotted at the northern border. She was alone, injured, carrying the scent of a different territory. It was Zara, one of the lionesses who had fled when the Outlanders attacked. She had spent the year in exile, moving from place to place, never finding a home. Kali ordered his males to bring her in carefully. She was frightened, defensive, ready to fight or flee at any moment. But when she saw Kali, recognition flickered in her eyes. He had been part of her family. He had survived. He had come back. The territory is stable now, Kali told her, his voice calm and welcoming. We have built something here that is worth returning to, a place where you can raise cubs safely, a place where you will be valued and protected. Zara looked at this male, who had once been playful and full of energy, and now carried himself with a different kind of strength, not the strength of domination, but the strength that comes from carrying grief and not breaking under its weight. What happened to you? She asked. My brother died, Kali said simply, and I learned that living well is the best way to honor the dead. Word spread through the region about Kali and his transformed pride. Other females came, seeking refuge and stability. Other young males, exiles like Kali had been, arrived seeking a coalition that valued more than just dominance. The territory grew stronger, not through conquest but through reputation. The most significant change came during the dry season. A coalition of 4 males from the west attempted to invade the territory. They were strong, coordinated, dangerous. They had successfully taken 3 territories in the past 2 years. When they approached Kali's border, they expected resistance, but they did not expect what they found. Instead of a single dominant male defending his territory with brutal force, they found an organized defensive system, males positioned at strategic points, females ready to protect the cubs, young males trained and prepared. The invaders realized immediately that this was not a territory held by fear and aggression. This was a territory held by unity. But what shocked them most was Kali's response to their invasion attempt. When the Western males attacked, Kali did not attack back with fury and vengeance. Instead, he fought with complete control and discipline. His coalition pushed them back not to kill, but to make a point. This territory would be defended, but it would be defended fairly, by rules that even enemies could respect. 2 of the Western males were killed in the conflict. The other 2 fled, spreading the story of the territory defended by a coalition that fought with honor. That reputation alone kept other invaders away.
That night, after the battle, Kali stood at the place where Darius had died. The acacia tree still stood there,
older now,
its trunk
scarred by time.
Kali
pressed his forehead against the rough bark and allowed himself to remember. He remembered teaching Darius how to stalk prey.
He remembered his brother's laugh,
a rumbling sound that carried joy.
He remembered the nights they slept back to back,
their bodies providing warmth and comfort to each other. He remembered everything, but he no longer felt the crushing weight of grief that had defined him for so long. The grief was still there, woven into the fabric of who he was, but it had transformed into something else, into purpose, into drive, into the understanding that the best way to honor someone you lost is to live fully in their absence. Simba found him there as the stars began to appear. "You have built something remarkable here," Simba said, settling down beside his leader and friend. No, Kali replied. "We built something remarkable, all of us. I just provided the reason to build it. Do you still think about him?"
Simba
asked.
About
Darius?
Every single day,
Kali said without hesitation.
Every time I make a decision about the territory,
every time I teach a young male,
every time I see Koto hunting,
I think about how Darius would have loved to see this, how proud he would have been of what his death eventually created. And does that help? Simba asked. Does thinking about him help? Kali was quiet for a long moment. At first, thinking about him only hurt. It reminded me of what I lost. But now, thinking about him reminds me of what I have. A territory that is strong. A coalition that is united. A new generation being raised with better values than the ones I started with. If Darius could see this, he would know that his death was not meaningless. The seasons turned, the rains came again, and again the territory flourished. Kali grew older, his mane darkening further, his movements becoming slightly slower, but his mind remained sharp, and his leadership only deepened with time. Young Kato grew into a magnificent male, showing all the qualities of Darius that Kali had nurtured. But more importantly, he also showed the wisdom that came from being raised in a territory that valued cooperation over dominance. He would be a good leader when his time came. One afternoon, as Kali was resting in the shade of the acacia tree, he noticed something he had not seen before. The tree was bearing fruit. Heavy, ripe fruit that would feed the animals of the savannah. Life was coming from the very spot where death had once seemed absolute. It was a small thing, hardly worth noting, but Kali understood its significance. From death comes life. From grief comes growth. From one brother's loss comes lessons that shape an entire pride for generations. The territory that had been stolen by outlanders was now a place of stability and peace. The pride that had been scattered was now the strongest in the region. The male who had been broken by grief had become whole again, not by forgetting his loss, but by transforming it into something that mattered. Kali looked out across the grasslands at the females hunting together, the young cubs playing safely, the coalition of males patrolling the boundaries with discipline and purpose. This was Darius's legacy, not in the form of offspring, not in the form of a name spoken in stories, but in the form of a better way of living, a way that his death had made possible. And for the first time since that terrible morning when the outlanders attacked, Kali felt something close to peace. The roars of his pride echoed across the savannah as the sun descended toward the horizon. They were not roars of conquest. They were not roars of dominance. They were roars of a family that had survived loss and come out stronger on the other side. They were roars that carried Darius's memory forward into the future, ensuring that his death was not the end of a story, but the beginning of a new chapter. 5 years passed. 5 years of seasons turned, of cubs being born and growing into hunters, of territory expanding not through conquest, but through earned respect. Kali was no longer a young male. His face showed the marks of time. Scars from old battles had faded into his golden coat. His mane, once thick and dark, had begun to grey at the edges, but his eyes remained sharp, still carrying that intensity that had kept the territory stable through every challenge. The pride had grown to nearly 30 lions. It was the largest pride in the region, not through aggressive expansion, but through careful management and the reputation Kali had built. Young females joined when they reached maturity. Young males, sons of the pride's lionesses, were allowed to stay longer than was typical in lion society, learning the way of cooperation before eventually establishing their own territories nearby. Kato, The cub Kali had named after his lost brother, had become the second in command. He had his mother's speed and his father's strength, but more importantly, he had inherited something from Kali that went beyond physical traits. He had inherited wisdom, the understanding that true power came not from being the largest or the strongest, but from being the most capable of making decisions that helped everyone survive. One morning, as the pride was preparing for a hunt, a messenger arrived. Not a lion, but a bird, a crowned eagle that carried information through the region in ways that lions could not. The message was simple. A young male had been spotted 2 territories away, a male who matched the description of Jabari, the outlander who had fled during the final battle 5 years ago, the male who had abandoned Shaka when the pressure became too great. Kali received this news without visible reaction, but inside, something stirred. The outlander who had run, the male who had chosen survival over loyalty, was he still alive? Was he still out there somewhere, carrying forward the bloodline of the coalition that had killed Darius? Simba noticed the change in his friend immediately. You are thinking about him, Simba said. It was not a question. Yes, Kali admitted. I wonder if he has thought about what he did, if he remembers abandoning his brothers, if he understands that running did not save him, it only delayed the consequences. And what will you do? Simba asked carefully. Will you hunt him? Kali was quiet for a long moment. The old Kali, the Kali of 5 years ago, would have answered yes immediately, would have gathered his strongest males and tracked Jabari across the savannah, determined to finish what had been started in that final battle, would have seen the escaped outlander as unfinished business, as a threat that needed to be eliminated. But Kali had changed. The weight of 5 years had taught him things that revenge never could. No, Kali said finally, I will not hunt him. Jabari ran because he understood that he was not strong enough to fight what was coming. He chose exile over death. That was his choice to make. And now he lives with the consequences of that choice. That is punishment enough. Simba looked at his leader with something like pride. Darius would be proud of you for what you have become. I hope so, Kali said. I truly hope so,
Kali said.
But even as he said the words, something gnawed at him. 5 years of stability, 5 years of building, 5 years of creating something that mattered. And yet, at the core of everything remained that original wound, the moment when his brother died, the moment when everything changed. That afternoon, Kali did something he had not done in nearly 2 years. He walked to the acacia tree alone. He pressed his forehead against the rough bark and allowed himself to remember everything, not with the pain of fresh grief, but with the bittersweet ache of deep loss. He remembered the day Darius was born. He remembered teaching him to hunt. He remembered the way his brother moved with such grace and speed that it made the other lions look clumsy in comparison. He remembered the sound of Darius's laugh when they were playing as cubs. He remembered the night before the attack, when they had slept back to back, their bodies warm against each other, neither knowing it would be the last time. And he remembered the moment of Darius's death. He had replayed it 1,000 times, memorized every detail, analyzed every second. In his mind, he had found 100 different ways that moment could have gone differently, 100 different choices he could have made that would have saved his brother. But in reality, there had been only one outcome: death.
There had been only one outcome:
final.
Death.
Kali opened his eyes and looked out across the territory. The grasslands rolled toward the horizon, endless and eternal. Somewhere out there, Jabari was living his exile. Somewhere out there, other lions were being born and dying, fighting and hunting, creating their own stories of loss and survival. The world continued. Time marched forward. Death and birth existed in endless cycle, and yet, standing here at this acacia tree, Kali felt connected to something larger than himself. He felt the presence of every lion who had lived in this territory before him. He felt the presence of Darius, not as a ghost, but as a permanent part of the landscape. His brother was in the grass. His brother was in the water. His brother was in every decision Kali made about the territory's future. That night, Kali called the entire pride together. It was unusual. The pride gathered only for major announcements or emergencies. The lions could sense the importance of the moment as they settled in a large circle, with Kali at the center. I want to tell you a story, Kali began. A story about a male who died in this territory 5 years ago. A male named Darius. He was my brother, my hunting partner, my closest friend. He died because of violence and loss, and the brutal
He
ways
died
of the
because of
savannah.
violence
The
and
pride
loss,
listened
and
in
the brutal
silence.
ways of the
Many of
savannah.
them had never
The
known
pride
Darius.
listened in silence.
He was already a
Many
memory,
of them
a
had
ghost
never
from
known
their
Darius.
pride's past.
He was
But they
already a
sensed the
memory,
importance
a
of this
ghost from their
moment.
pride's
They
past.
sensed that their
But they
leader was
sensed the
sharing
importance
something
of this moment.
fundamental.
They
When
sensed
Darius
that their leader
died,
was sharing
I
something
became
fundamental.
broken.
When
Kali
Darius
continued.
died,
I thought
became
that if I
broken.
killed his
Kali
murderer,
continued.
if I took
I
revenge,
thought that if I killed
crushed
his
the
murderer,
males who had
if I
taken
took
his
revenge,
life, then
if I
somehow the
crushed the
pain would
males
go
who had
away.
taken his life,
But I was
then
wrong.
somehow the
Revenge
pain
did
would
not
go
heal
away.
me.
That
Revenge
was
only
wrong.
created more
Revenge
loss,
did not heal
more
me.
pain, more
Revenge
death.
only created
Young
more loss,
Cato listened
more pain,
intently,
more
his
death.
eyes fixed on his
Young
adoptive
Cato
father
listened
figure.
intently.
What healed
His eyes
me,
fixed on
Kali
his
said,
adoptive father
was
figure.
understanding that the best
What
way
healed
to
me,
honor
Kali
the
said,
dead is to live
was
well,
understanding
is to
that the
create
best way to
something
honor
better
the
than
dead
what came
is to
before,
live well,
is to use
is to
the
create
lessons they
something
taught
better
you,
than what
to
came
build a
before,
pride that is
is to
stronger,
use the lessons
smarter,
they taught
and
you
kinder
to
than
build
any
a
pride
pride
before
that
it.
is stronger.
Kali
Kali
paused,
paused,
his gaze moving across the assembled lions. I am not a young male anymore, he said. I will not lead this territory forever. Soon, younger males will take over, and I want them to know what Darius taught me through his death. That family matters more than dominance, that loyalty matters more than strength, that a coalition built on mutual respect and shared values will always be stronger than a coalition built on fear. Over the following days, Kali began the process of officially transferring power. It was not a sudden change, but a gradual shift. Cato took on more responsibility. Simba mentored the younger males in the ways of territory management. The change was so gradual that most of the pride barely noticed it happening, but Kali knew. He could feel his role changing. He was no longer the leader who made every decision. He was becoming the elder, the keeper of knowledge, the one who provided guidance when asked but allowed others to lead. One morning, nearly 6 months after his gathering speech, Kali woke to find that his body did not want to cooperate as it once had. His joints ached. His breathing came slightly harder. Age was catching up with him in ways he could no longer ignore. He did not panic. He had known this day would come. Every lion knows that their time is limited. The African wilderness does not reward age. The strong are replaced by the stronger. That was the way of things. Cato found him resting in the afternoon shade. You are sick, Cato said.
You are sick,
not as a question, but as an observation. I am old, Kali corrected.
I am old.
Sickness is just what happens when a male gets old. Cato sat down beside him, his massive body providing shade. What should I do? You should lead, Kali said. You are ready. You have been ready for longer than you realized. Over the following weeks, Kali grew weaker. The pride began to cluster around him, as if trying to hold back the inevitable through sheer force of will. But Kali did not struggle against what was coming. He had made peace with death long ago. On his final night, Kali walked one last time to the acacia tree. His legs barely held him up. His breathing was labored, but he needed to be here. He needed to be at this place where everything had changed. He pressed his forehead against the bark, just as he had done so many times before. I am coming, brother, he whispered. I am coming to find you in whatever lies beyond this place. The stars came out, brilliant and eternal. The sounds of the savannah filled the night. Predators calling, prey responding. The endless cycle of life and death continuing without pause. When the pride found Kali the next morning, he was at peace. His eyes were closed. His body had released the tension it had carried for 5 years. The male who had sought revenge was gone. In his place remained the legacy he had built, a stable territory, a united pride, a way of living that honored the dead by building a better future. The funeral was unlike any the Savannah had seen. The entire pride gathered. Even neighboring prides sent representatives. Lions came from territories across the region to pay their respects to the male who had transformed a personal tragedy into a community triumph. Cato stood at the head of the gathering, his mane full and dark, his eyes carrying the same intensity that Kali's had carried.
My father,
Cato said, using the term loosely because Kali had raised him, though Kali was not his biological father, taught me that strength is not measured by the enemies you defeat, but by the family you protect. He taught me that the best revenge is building something better than what was destroyed. He taught me that a brother's death can become the foundation for an entire pride's future. Cato looked out at the assembled lions. I will not be the leader he was. I will be the leader he prepared me to become, and I will ensure that his legacy continues, not through stories of conquest and revenge, but through the stable, thriving territory he built with his own paws and his own heart. The pride roared then, a sound that carried across the savannah, reaching the ears of every creature for miles around. It was a roar of mourning. It was a roar of respect. It was a roar that said, "A great male has passed, but his work continues." In the days and weeks that followed, Cato proved worthy of the role. He led with wisdom. He made decisions that valued the pride's stability. He hunted with coordination and purpose. And most importantly, he remembered. He remembered Kali. He remembered Darius. He remembered the lessons that had been purchased with blood and suffering. Years later, when young cubs asked about the history of their territory, the elders would tell them the story of two brothers, the story of loss and transformation, the story of a male who had learned that the greatest revenge is not destroying your enemies, but building something beautiful in the place where they tried to destroy you. And somewhere in the grasslands of the Serengeti, where the acacia trees still grew and the sun still rose and set each day, the spirit of Darius lived on, not as a ghost of pain, but as a living force that guided every decision made by those who came after. His death had been the beginning of something greater than himself. His absence had created presence. His loss had created legacy. The territory thrived. The pride grew strong. And the lesson that Kali had learned through the hardest journey of his life lived on in every roar, every hunt, every decision made by the lions who called this land home. Because in the end, that is how the wild works. Not through individual strength or personal revenge, but through the bonds between individuals, through families that choose to stand together, through the understanding that your loss can become another's strength, through the knowledge that the best way to honor the dead is to live so fully, so completely, so purposefully that their memory becomes immortal. Kali had lost his brother in battle, but he had gained something far more valuable. He had gained understanding. He had gained wisdom. He had gained the ability to transform grief into grace, and that transformation had rippled outward, touching every lion in the territory, creating a legacy that would outlive him by generations.